So I'm a scientist, and that means that when I want to understand the world, I look to data about the world to try and do it. The first time that we started doing learning analytics work, in my experience, was to examine the courses that I teach, the large introductory physics courses that I've worked in for many years. I became increasingly aware that we had very rich stores of data about our students, information about their background, where they're coming from before they come to the class, information about what happens to them in an introductory physics course, and then information about where they go all the way up until the time that they graduate. We had never really used that information to try and understand what was happening to students in our classes, how we were building on what they brought to the class, what the course gave to them that they carried forward into the future. We'd never really studied that, even though the data existed. So my natural inclination was to start using this data to try and understand the experience of our students. And it taught us many, many lessons, even in the very first time that we looked at it. Data's like that. In fact, the greatest gains come from the first time you look at the data. And so the first lesson we learned, the most powerful lesson I think we learned in studying our introductory physics students, shouldn't have been a surprise, but was, at least to me. We learned that our students are not all the same. Because if you teach a large class and you don't have any other information about the students, you walk in the classroom, you look out at this sea of faces, and all you know is they're students at Michigan. I guess they're all the same. So I came to those classes thinking I should treat the students in the same way and expect the same kinds of outcomes from them. This was all wrong. They're really coming from different places, and to teach them really well, we need to be aware of where they're coming from and also aware of where they're hoping to go to, and to tailor the experience to each individual student. So that's how we got started in learning analytics.
It has been an ongoing effort in my lab since really before the term learning analytics became popular, because we came to view the data that's collected by the use of our learning management system as an incredible wealth of information about what students were doing in service of learning on our campus. And when I realized that our learning management system literally captured every click that any student or instructor did in our learning management system, I realized that we had a new source of information about what students were doing. So that was really the springboard for me in the area that we call analytics. And it wasn't until I met Tim McKay and we started thinking about what other information do we have about students here on our campus that would help us understand those students and how we might tailor the learning experience at a more individual level for students without needing to do anything new or anything different necessarily, but rather to combine data that we have in all different places on campus and use it in a way that it hadn't been used before. And that's really what we're doing with the analytics movement here on our campus.
Learning analytics are going to play a ever more important role in how we think about education for a number of purposes, including how we guide students across macro scale landscapes of education. So how a student makes choices about the career pathway they may want to be on, the kinds of courses they should be taking to inform that pathway, and also more micro scale aspects of education learning. So for a student who is working on a particular set of problems in a class, and if they're struggling, how can we give them the right kind of guidance or information? But a key to all of that is thinking really with great clarity about how we can take the data that is generated by the way people interact with various kinds of learning media and turn that around into actionable information. What can a student do to act on information that's made available to them about their own learning? What can an instructor do, or a mentor, or a coach, or an advisor to help guide a student based on real information about what that student's doing? This is actually the way education has always proceeded. We talk about formative assessment, which is the process of trying to understand what a student is currently doing and at what level, and then making adjustments to the instructional process in some way to better address that student's needs where they are. With learning analytics, the claim we make is that we're going to have better data, better information. I don't think we're all the way yet to understanding how to make sense of that information, or how to present it to people in ways they can act on. But the promise is there, and that's what we're trying to work on right now at Michigan, is making sense of different kinds of data for different kinds of purposes.
As our interactions become things that happen more and more in a digital space, they generate more and more extended information about what we're doing. And if we study that information, we can learn how what we do affects the outcomes we might like to have. It gives us the opportunity to understand what's happening, with whom, and to connect that then to the kinds of outcomes that we might seek. So that in the end, we might be able to, in an informed way, tell students, if you want to be really successful in learning this, all the people who were successful for the last 5 years did these things. So if you want to do it, your best bet is you should do these things. Your behaviors, your actions should be these behaviors and actions, because those will lead to the kind of outcomes that you're hoping to have. And then the student, of course, gets to make the choice. Do they want to do that or not? But at least now they know what kinds of behaviors are really needed in order to reach those outcomes. You might compare a circumstance like that, in which a student is really able to learn from the experience of every other student who's taken this class, to the current circumstance. Right now, if a student wants to learn how to be successful in a course, they ask their roommate what they should do to be successful in the course. They get advice, they get information from one person, or maybe it's 5 people. But in this picture of the future, they might actually be able to get information from all the people who've ever taken a class like this. In fact, one of my great hopes for learning analytics is that it will get us to the point where every student will be able to learn from the experience of every prior Michigan student. And of course, we have a lot of Michigan students. So if we enable that, each new student who comes in will be able to learn something from what has happened in the experience of every other student who's come before them. That's got to lead to the opportunity for each of our students to improve their own experience, to find the things they really want to do, to learn how to be successful in the things they really care about.